Kesha anticipated a routine morning, just serving a quiet veteran his breakfast. Yet less than 24 hours later her diner was surrounded by soldiers, Humvees and even a tank. What that man revealed would irrevocably alter everything. That particular morning, Kesha Rowland expected nothing out of the ordinary. Her 10-year-old daughter Amara had missed the school bus again, forcing Kesha into a frantic dash. Still in her apron she drove Amara to school, then navigated the Fort Bragg traffic to arrive at the diner just in time for opening. She hadn't consumed coffee, hadn't eaten, hadn't even applied lipstick. She simply clocked in, tied up her hair and began her shift. The diner occupied a corner spot on Ramsey Street in Fayetteville. It boasted a single functional heater, a finicky espresso machine, and a devoted clientele of morning regulars. Mostly truckers, nurses finishing night shifts and a handful of ROTC cadets from the nearby base. Business was slow. The usual older gentlemen in the window booth were engrossed in a football debate, while a student typed diligently on a laptop in the corner. No one noticed the man when he entered. He wore an aged olive-green jacket with a shoulder patch and boots that had endured much. His shoulders were broad, but his movements carried a certain weight, as if his joints had long contended with gravity. Kesha looked up from wiping the counter. "Morning," she said, a reflex. He offered a small, polite smile, then settled at the farthest end of the counter, distant from everyone else. When she presented a menu he waved it off. "Just coffee, black, and 2 eggs if you have them," he murmured, his gaze fixed on the sugar dispenser as if it held profound secrets. Kesha smiled. "We've got eggs. I'll even include toast, no extra charge if you let me select the jam." This elicited a brief chuckle, which she considered a small victory. She poured the coffee, then prepared 2 eggs over medium with wheat toast. She ensured its appealing presentation, even garnishing it with an orange slice, a habit inherited from her grandmother who believed presentation still counts for something, even if no one's looking. 15 minutes later, the man concluded his meal. He meticulously placed his fork across the plate and folded his napkin in half. That's when Kesha observed him reaching into his jacket pocket. He retrieved a leather wallet, fumbled, then checked another pocket. His hand froze. Kesha intervened before he could feel embarrassed. "It's on me," she stated, feigning to examine something on her notepad. "We're running a breakfast special. Veterans eat free on Tuesdays." The man slowly lifted his gaze, his eyes gray and still, as if they had witnessed countless events and retained every single one. "I didn't see that on the door." She kept her tone light. "It's not written anywhere. Just how I prefer to operate." There was a pause, just a second, but it resonated with significance. "Thank you," he said simply. "You didn't have to do that." Kesha shrugged. "Sure I did." She returned to wiping counters. He lingered a few more moments, finishing his coffee, then stood, pushed in the stool and departed quietly. She assumed that was the end of it, just one more small act of kindness in a life that sorely lacked them. But it wasn't. Something about the way he looked at her before leaving lingered, as if he wished to say more but chose not to. The next morning, Kesha was running 5 minutes behind schedule. Amara had decided she disliked her hair and insisted on restyling her braids into a bun before school. Kesha didn't argue, simply helped her, kissed her forehead and promised pancakes on Saturday if she behaved. She didn't notice anything unusual until she turned onto Ramsey Street. Initially, it was the cars parked bumper to bumper along both sides of the street, resembling a parade. Then as she drew nearer, her stomach lurched. A military Humvee was directly in front of the diner, then another, and behind them she squinted. It couldn't be. No way. But there it was. A full-sized army green tank, its barrel angled slightly left as if awaiting orders. Kesha stopped walking, keys in hand, her heart thudding against her ribs. People were already gathering. Locals from the nearby gas station, a couple of teenagers filming with their phones, and standing before the diner, a wall of uniformed soldiers, all at attention. "What the hell?" Kesha whispered. Her phone vibrated in her apron pocket. It was Jasmine, her co-worker. "Where are you? You seeing this?" The text read. Kesha didn't reply. She was too absorbed in trying to comprehend the scene. An officer, clean-shaven, tall, with a silver pin on his collar, noticed her and approached. "Ma'am, are you Kesha Rowland?" Her throat went dry. "Yeah, that's me." He gave a slight nod, then sharply turned to face the line of soldiers. Without a word, he raised his hand. The soldiers all took one step to the right, creating a clear path to the diner entrance. A single man stepped forward from behind them. Same jacket, same boots, but now his medals adorned his chest, not boastfully, but like someone bearing the weight of every decision ever made. He appeared older in the daylight, more real. Kesha squinted. "That's him," she whispered to herself. "That's the guy." The man approached with a calm, steady stride as if traversing a memory. "Miss Rowland," he said, "good morning." Kesha blinked. Hi. My name is General Raymond Callahan. I came here yesterday for a quiet breakfast. I didn't say who I was, didn't want to make a scene." She swallowed, glancing behind him. The tank hadn't moved. He continued, "But what you did, what you said, that kind of kindness isn't common, especially not when no one's watching." Kesha managed a nervous laugh. "Sir, it was just a breakfast." He shook his head. "No ma'am, it wasn't." Then he stepped aside and gestured toward the line of soldiers. "I made a few calls last night. Told some folks what happened. They wanted to be here." She looked again. Some of the men seemed older, others young, different ranks, different backgrounds. Some had faces that told stories on their own. "This isn't a protest. It's not a PR stunt. It's a thank you." He pulled something from his jacket pocket. Not a medal, not a flag. A handwritten letter, creased and worn. "My wife, before she passed, used to say that kindness is the rarest kind of strength. She'd write letters to strangers who did something kind, no matter how small. I stopped doing it when she died." He handed the letter to Kesha. "But today I wanted to start again." She took the envelope with trembling hands. Inside she found a simple note. 1 plate of eggs. 1 soul restored. "Thank you." The crowd behind them had fallen silent. Even the teenagers had lowered their phones. Kesha stared at him, speechless. She'd arrived expecting to refill ketchup bottles. Instead, she was now standing in front of a tank and a crowd of soldiers, being thanked by a man who hadn't spoken publicly in over 10 years. She opened her mouth, but nothing emerged. She wanted to say something, anything, but her voice couldn't catch up to her thoughts. The diner door opened behind them. Jasmine peeked out, apron still half-tied, eyes wide. "Kesha, is this a joke? What's going on?" Kesha slowly shook her head, still clutching the letter as if it might float away if she let go. "I don't know," she murmured. "I really don't." General Callahan turned toward Jasmine. "Ma'am, I apologize for the disruption. We'll move things along quickly. I just needed to speak to Miss Rowland in person." "Sir," Kesha finally found her voice. "Why all this? The soldiers, the tank? I mean, it's eggs and toast. People do way more every day." Callahan offered a half-smile. "Maybe so. But very few do it without expectation. You didn't ask who I was. You didn't make a post about it. You just acted." He paused, glancing back at the line of soldiers. "That hit me harder than any ceremony I've been through." A local news crew had now arrived, camera on shoulder, mic extended, a reporter attempting to ask questions from behind the crowd. But the general held up a hand and they remained silent. "You know why I walked in here yesterday?" he asked Kesha, his voice dropping lower. She shook her head. "I was trying to say goodbye." That stopped her cold. "I'd spent the last few months selling my house in Idaho. No wife, no kids, no family left. Came back down here to wrap up some old affairs, see the base one last time. I figured I'd grab a final breakfast, then go find a hotel, quiet, clean." He looked down for a second, the strength in his posture wavered just a little. "But when you brought me those eggs, made it look like you actually cared what the plate looked like, I felt something I hadn't felt in years." The words hung heavy in the air. "I realized I'd been preparing to disappear," he continued, "but then I met someone who made me feel seen without even knowing who I was." Kesha's throat tightened. This man, this stranger she'd fed without a second thought, was about to give up, and her 5-minute act of decency had pulled him back. She felt her knees start to wobble, but she remained standing. "General," she said, her voice thin, "I'm glad you're still here." Callahan gave her a quiet nod. Then he turned to the crowd. "Miss Rowland is a reminder of what dignity looks like. And I wanted the men who served under me to see what leadership in the real world looks like too." One of the younger soldiers stepped forward. "Ma'am," he said, reaching into his coat, "this is for you." He handed her a heavy bronze plaque, her name etched into the metal. "To Kesha Rowland, for honor in humility." Kesha blinked, struggling to hold back tears. "What am I supposed to do with?" she whispered. Callahan answered gently, "Whatever you want. But you deserve to know the effect you've had. You saved a life. Might have saved mine." The crowd was quiet. The news crew still hadn't moved. Kesha looked at the plaque, then at the soldiers, then at the man who'd returned just to thank her. Her voice cracked. "I'm just a waitress." Callahan looked her in the eye. "Not today, you're not." Kesha stood there holding that plaque, trying to keep her legs from giving out. But deep down she knew this wasn't the end of it. By noon, local media vans circled the block like hawks. The police arrived not to control chaos but to help redirect traffic. A few officers even stepped out of their cars to take photos with some of the veterans. Inside the diner, things were calmer but tense. Jasmine kept wiping the same table repeatedly while Kesha sat in a corner booth with General Callahan across from her. He'd ordered coffee again, she hadn't touched hers. Outside, the soldiers had cleared a path so regular customers could still enter, though most only came in to peek and then leave in disbelief. "I don't know how to handle this," Kesha admitted, staring into her cup. "You don't have to handle it," Callahan said. "You just keep being who you are." "That's the problem," her voice was flat. "Who I am doesn't have room for all this." She looked toward the front counter where her manager was on the phone, probably with corporate, his face reddening by the minute. "I've been here 6 years. Same uniform, same double shifts. I pick up every holiday no one else wants. Work birthdays. Do dishes when the dishwasher calls out. You know how many times someone's told me thank you?" She held up her fingers. "Twice. Both times came from customers who didn't speak English." Callahan sat back, letting her speak. "I do it because it pays the rent. Because my daughter needs school shoes. Because I don't have a backup plan. And because I've got this dumb idea that maybe, just maybe, treating people decent still counts for something." His voice softened. "It does." Kesha leaned forward. "So tell me, why did one breakfast bring a tank to my front door?" Callahan thought for a moment before answering. "Because you reminded me what I fought for." She didn't speak, she just looked away. "I've led missions in 5 countries. Lost men I still think about every day. Got medals in a drawer somewhere that I don't even take out. You think that makes me strong? But strength is doing what's right when nobody's clapping. You do that every day." Kesha let the silence settle between them. Outside, someone had brought a fold-out table and set up a tray of free donuts and coffee for the growing crowd. A group of veterans were sharing old stories, laughing. Inside, the atmosphere was different, heavier. Kesha finally looked up again. "You want the truth? I'm tired. Not just in my feet. In my chest. It's like surviving never takes a break." Callahan nodded. "That's why we're here. You gave something that didn't cost you money but most people won't give. You gave presence, grace. That's rare." She laughed once dry. "Grace doesn't pay my light bill." "No, it doesn't," he admitted. "But maybe it buys you something more important. Like people finally seeing you." Just then the bell above the door rang. A woman entered, mid-50s, camera around her neck, notepad already out. She approached slowly. "Miss Rowland, I'm with the Fayetteville Ledger. Mind if I ask a few questions?" Kesha's jaw tightened but she didn't say no. The reporter sat down and asked the first thing that came to her mind. "Why did you pay for his breakfast?" Kesha blinked. "Because he looked like he needed someone to do it." The reporter paused. "Did you know who he was?" "Nope." "And you didn't expect anything in return?" "I didn't even expect him to remember me the next day." The reporter smiled, then scribbled notes. "Last one," she said gently. "If your daughter reads about this when she's older, what do you want her to learn from it?" Kesha's answer came quicker this time. That you don't have to be rich or powerful to change someone's day. You just have to notice them. The reporter closed her notebook, and Kesha knew this moment was going to spread further than she could control. The next day the crowd doubled. People drove in from Durham, from Greensboro, even some from Raleigh. Not everyone came to gawk. Some brought flowers. A few left cards on the diner windowsill with messages like, "We see you now," and "You reminded us." Inside, Kesha had barely sat down when the bell above the door rang again. It was General Callahan. This time he wasn't alone. 2 women and 1 man followed him in, each dressed sharply as if they'd just stepped out of a government meeting. One carried a black briefcase, another had a folder tucked beneath her arm. Kesha slowly stood. "Sir." Callahan smiled, warm but firm. Miss Rowland, we have something we'd like to propose. Jasmine backed into the kitchen, whispering something to the cook. Even he stopped flipping bacon to peek. I didn't agree to a TV deal or anything, Kesha said, half joking, half worried. This isn't about television, the woman with the folder replied. It's about opportunity. They all sat down. Callahan placed a small envelope on the table. In the army, he began, we have a saying, you don't leave your people behind. When I walked out of here that first day, I couldn't stop thinking about how many women like you keep this country going quietly without spotlight and without help. Kesha glanced at the envelope. What's in there? He slid it forward. Enough to cover your rent for a year. Enough to buy you breathing room. She hesitated. I didn't do this for charity. We know, the man with the briefcase said. That's exactly why you deserve it. Callahan continued, but there's more. This isn't just a thank you. It's a step forward. One of my colleagues runs a veteran support program, housing, job training, mental health services. He's been looking to partner with a local business, a community hub. Kesha raised an eyebrow. And we'd like to invest in this diner. She blinked. Say what now? You've already turned it into a place where people feel seen, the woman with the folder added. Imagine what it could become with the right backing. A community kitchen, a safe place for returning soldiers, job training for single mothers. You'd run it. Kesha laughed, short and sharp. I'm a waitress, not a business owner. Callahan leaned in. You're more than that. And you'd have support, training, a team. This isn't just a gift, it's a partnership. She leaned back, arms crossed. Why me? Because you've already done the hard part, he said. You cared when no one asked you to. You built something here without knowing it. We're just offering to build with you. Kesha stared at the envelope. She thought about Amara, how many times she'd had to say no to field trip money or that new pair of cleats. She thought about the nights she cried on the bus ride home, makeup smudged, tips barely enough for gas. She thought about her grandmother's voice in her head. Keep your head down, baby girl, and let your work speak louder than your mouth. And now her work had screamed. She looked back up at the general. This isn't just about me, is it? No, he said quietly, but it starts with you. She tapped her nails once on the table, then exhaled. I'll think about it. Take all the time you need, he said, but just know you earned this. Kesha didn't touch the envelope right away. She just stared at it, knowing full well that nothing would be the same once she opened it. 2 weeks later, the help wanted sign came down. Kesha didn't make a big announcement. She didn't post on social media or send out any newsletters, mostly because she didn't have any. But the regulars noticed. Jasmine noticed. Even the line cook, who barely spoke 5 words a shift, asked if something was up. What was up was this, she said. Yes. Yes to the partnership. Yes to the funding. Yes to letting her life change. The diner stayed open through the transition, but the changes came fast. New chairs, fresh paint, a bulletin board near the front that read resources for veterans and families, flyers about mental health counseling, resume help, free childcare during VA appointments. People noticed. Some came in skeptical. One man leaned on the counter and asked, "So what, this place is for vets now?" Kesha smiled while pouring coffee. It's still for everyone, but now some folks who didn't have a place, they got one. A woman in scrubs nodded approvingly from a booth. An older man wearing a navy cap lifted his cup in silent thanks. The shift wasn't just physical, it was personal. Kesha had started to walk a little taller, not because she had more money, she didn't, not really. Every 100 was being reinvested. But because for once she wasn't just surviving, she was steering. She even bought a laptop, took online classes at night, sitting at the kitchen table while Amara did her homework beside her. "You're gonna be a boss now?" Amara asked one night, kicking her legs under the table. Kesha grinned. "I guess I already am." Of course not everyone cheered. A man who used to come in every Sunday left a nasty review online, saying the place had gone political. One couple walked out when they saw the wall of veteran photos near the bathroom. But those voices grew quieter as more people stepped in. People like Mrs. Chavez, whose son had just come home from overseas and didn't know how to apply for jobs, or Terrence, a quiet army retiree who started bussing tables during the lunch shift because he said he liked having somewhere to go again. One Friday morning, Kesha walked in to find a bouquet of sunflowers on the counter with a card. "Your kindness created a home." Thank you for not looking away. Callahan. She kept the flowers in a mason jar behind the register. They wilted in a week, but she never threw them out. And then came the ceremony. It was supposed to be small, just a ribbon cutting with the nonprofit folks and some local vets. But word spread. The parking lot filled up. Reporters came back. A marching band from the local high school showed up uninvited and played outside. Kesha stood in front of the newly painted sign, Roland's table, serving food, serving people, and tried to find the words. She didn't speak long, just enough. I was just trying to be decent, she said. That's it. I didn't know it would matter. But maybe that's the point. Applause, hugs, flashbulbs. General Callahan stayed at the edge of the crowd, letting her have the moment. He didn't need the spotlight, he just wanted to see what happened when someone gave it to the right person. Kesha locked eyes with him once during the ceremony. He gave a slight smile, then turned away. But this time it felt like a beginning, not an ending. A month later, Kesha stood in the back lot behind the diner, watching Amara ride her new bike in wide, clumsy circles. It was almost sunset. The restaurant had closed early that day so volunteers could host a resource fair for military families. A DJ played soft soul music near the patio while kids laughed over ice cream donated by a local shop. Kesha leaned on the wooden railing, sipping sweet tea, her shoes finally off. Her feet hurt, but in a good way, the kind of hurt that came from movement, not survival. She didn't notice Callahan at first. You ever slow down? He asked, walking up beside her with his usual black coffee in hand. Thought you disappeared again, she said with a smirk. I wanted to, he replied. But my calendar's suddenly full of speaking requests, all because of you. She chuckled. I didn't make you famous. No, he said, but you reminded me who I was. That's harder. They stood quietly for a moment. Kids ran past them chasing bubbles. One little girl stopped to hug Kesha's leg. Kesha ruffled her hair and sent her running again. You still writing letters? She asked him. He nodded. One a week. I've got a list now. Teachers, nurses, janitors, single dads. People who hold up the world and never get thanked. Kesha smiled. I like that. He looked at her. You ever think about what might have happened if you hadn't said anything that day? All the time, she said softly. I wonder if you'd have come back at all. I wouldn't have, he answered, no hesitation. You should know that. She looked at him, the man who had walked into her diner barely hanging on, and somehow turned around and helped rebuild her world too. Then I'm glad I said something, she replied, even if it was just about toast and jam. He laughed. The strawberry jam. I remember. Silence stretched again, but this time it was comfortable. After a while, Kesha turned toward him. You know what's wild? For the first time in my life, people keep asking what I want to do next. And I don't have an answer. That's the best part, he said. You get to choose. The next morning, a handwritten sign was taped to the front door of the diner. Jasmine had found it first. Closed today. Staff appreciation breakfast. If you usually come here to be served, today is your turn to serve someone else. See you tomorrow. Kesha. It spread fast online. Some praised it, some were confused, but the message landed where it needed to. Later that day, Kesha cooked pancakes for her staff. She handed out thank you cards. She hugged Jasmine so tightly they both got flour on their cheeks. When a teenage dishwasher named Morris started to cry, she pulled him aside and said, You matter. You're not invisible here. That night, she walked home with Amara's hand in hers. I think I'm going to start a scholarship, she said aloud, for kids with parents who work too much and sleep too little. Name it after Grandma? Amara asked. Yeah, that'd be right. They didn't talk much more after that. The street was quiet. The air was soft. At a red light, Kesha looked down at her daughter. You proud of me? Amara gave her a serious look. Mom, you fed a general and made him cry. Then you got on TV without even trying. I'm super proud. Kesha laughed, tears stinging the corners of her eyes, not from sadness but from relief, from peace, from finally being seen. Because sometimes all it takes is one moment, one plate, one voice, one tiny act of kindness to stop someone from disappearing. And sometimes that moment ends up saving you too. If this story moved you in any way, remember, kindness isn't always loud, but it echoes farther than we think. Take a moment today to notice someone, speak up, show grace. You never know what it might spark. Don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories just like this. Your support helps us keep these voices alive.